Good afternoon, Genesee County. This is Matt Landers with our Genesee Connects series that we've been putting on for the last 3 or 4 weeks now. Today we're going to be having a discussion with staff from the District Attorney's Office. We have our District Attorney Larry Friedman here along with his first assistant Kevin Fennell. And we're interested in learning a little bit about what's been going on at the courts facility since it's been closed for the last, month plus of time now. And there's still work going on there. There's still hearings to a certain extent going on, but it's in a different format, different fashion. And I'm sure some people are wondering what's been going on over there. So Larry and Kevin are going to kind of give us an update along with some of the things that impact the daily lives of the citizens here in Genesee County and some questions they may be wondering about, and maybe some thoughts about going into the future about how technology might actually enhance or streamline the process and help justice, or at least savings in the taxpayers' pockets of how justice is delivered in the future. So we're going to let Larry start off with the discussion first. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah, okay. Well, basically, the courts, for the most part, shut down the middle of March. So, you know, it's hard to believe, but we're coming up on 2 months since appearances were canceled. Things that were on the calendar have been, at least in county court, where we handle the felonies, have been rescheduled a couple times. They put them off till the beginning of May, then they put them off to the middle of May, and then they were told to put them off to the beginning of June, and they haven't gone ahead and rescheduled because they want there to be a little more certainty that we're actually going to be going forward. So there's been a lot of time spent rescheduling things, and you know, we're sitting here waiting and wondering when we will actually get back to regular court appearances. Kevin, if you want to talk about what's been going on in the meantime.
In the meantime, there's been kind of a skeleton crew in the county courthouse. We are basically just handling arraignments as necessary, and those are rather few and far between. Doing those arraignments generally by Skype, where the public defender, or defense attorney, the representative from the DA's office are in their separate office, either home or here. The defendant is in the jail, and the court is, the judge is either in the courthouse, or sometimes he's even at home, and there's a clerk in the courthouse. So we're putting together all those parties plus a court reporter who's usually dialing in from home and conducting arraignments on matters that are of an emergent nature, I would say. Most, due to the bail reform, most of the offenses charged are handled without the formal arraignments, but we are certainly still conducting arraignments as necessary. We have a bit of a different system now, because whereas in the past, before the COVID situation, we had somebody charged with a felony would be arraigned in the local court in which, in the jurisdiction in which they committed the offense. So whether it was the town of Batavia, town of Leroy, village of Corfu, and so forth, they'd be arraigned in those courts. That's not happening now. During the business hours, our county court judge, Judge Zambito, is handling the arraignments for the entire county. And in the evening, our city court judge, Judge Rogers, is handling the arraignments for the entire county as necessary. So although the volume is down, the system has changed. Instead of live appearances where all parties get together in a courtroom, we're now doing the same thing, but via Skype. And that's been the primary difference that I've seen as I, stay in the office and the county building. We're still, as we can, getting discovery out as we're required to under the law. When we can identify attorneys to send discovery to, we are still making contact with the police agencies. They're calling us. We're giving them input as necessary. I should mention some police agencies have changed their procedures and in terms of taking complaints in person versus on the phone, but they are essentially fulfilling the same tasks. Any complaints can still go to the Genesee County Sheriff, the New York State Police, Leroy Police Department, Corfu as necessary. But although it's quieter, it's different, it is still much the same in terms of what we're doing. So that's kind of what we're doing currently.
Great, thanks for that, Kevin. So Larry, what are your thoughts on when you're able to open back up, when the court is able to open back up in probably some limited capacity, I'm sure with seating and distancing. I mean, we've got a long period of backlog of cases here. I guess, is there a thought that how long it's going to take before we get back to normalcy that to run through? So if you're 2 months behind on a lot of these cases, I'm just kind of, as the average person kind of thinking about, man, how long is it going to take to get caught up to see some semblance of normalcy?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we don't really know the answer because, first of all, we don't know how long it is going to be before things are back to so-called normal. Obviously, we're going through what is now at least a several-month period where there are no trials. And we had trials scheduled through this period of time, and they've all been taken off the calendar. And so we are going to have a backlog, and it is a concern for us about, dealing with everything when all of a sudden, things are going as they were before. As Kevin, and that's why, as Kevin mentioned, even though there are executive orders now that basically remove all of our time obligations, what I mean by that is, normally when someone's charged with a felony, and they're locked up, we have to present the case to the grand jury within 6 days, or they get released. Well, that doesn't apply now. So we don't have to do preliminary hearings right now. If the executive orders are not continued, that could change quickly. But that'll be interesting because it's my understanding that if we do that, we may very well be doing whatever preliminary hearings we want via Skype for Business, just like the other appearances that are being done now. But as Kevin said, that's why we are, when we know who the attorney is, we are continuing to provide discovery now, even though our obligation to do that is on hold as well. But we're doing it because we can, and because we don't want to be that backlogged when things get going again. There's no grand jury now, but again, we don't have that time constraint that we had before. We don't have, as far as being ready for trial, we don't have that time constraint. So, I don't know entirely what things are going to look like. We know we're going to get very busy, at some point here. And, we also are not really sure what the situation is going to be. I don't think it's going to return to normal per se as it was before. I think things will be different as far as social distancing. Maybe there will be a continuation of virtual court appearances like we're doing now, which I think could be a good thing.
With the technology that you're talking about, I'm, with the hat that I wear, that having to put the budget together, I look at potential savings on the road, and I'd be curious your thoughts on how technology can, at least whether they're budgetary savings or they're at least enhancements of service. I know we had talked before about the amount of time that sometimes we'll have a deputy that has to transport an inmate across the county lines throughout the state for a relatively quick appearance, and the hope that we can, now that we've been pushed into this mode, everyone's been pushed into this mode with the coronavirus, that the court administration and other state agencies will be more lenient and allowable for us to conduct more of our business with the technology. Is that your hopes as well, or thoughts?
As I mentioned to you before, it's been a lot of years since conversations started about the idea of having virtual court appearances, particularly with defendants who are incarcerated. Because, as you mentioned, and again, this is usually with female inmates, they could be housed in facilities that are maybe an hour and a half away. And so if you think about it, if it's an hour and a half away, which is maybe the extreme, but that's a 3-hour round trip twice in a day for a court appearance that could literally last a couple of minutes. So you're tying up a deputy sheriff, potentially when all is said and done, for an entire shift, possibly, just for a very brief court appearance that is not really of great consequence. We go into court, the return date on pretrial motions, and the defense attorney says, "Your Honor, we're willing to submit our motions on the papers," and we say we are as well, and they schedule a hearing, and that's the court appearance. So, it is pretty ridiculous, and we haven't had virtual appearances before this pandemic. Number one, the technology wasn't in place, and number two, there was really no provision for it. And it still requires the consent of the defendant. But my hope would be that is maybe one bit of good that might come out of this as a continuation of that type of thing.
Now, in your office, is there one of the thoughts I'm thinking about as far as what the average person on the street might be thinking about, and one of the reasons we're doing these Zoom Connect sessions with different departments and agencies is how it impacts people. What advice would you give to a person that would want to ask questions on their case, would want to ask questions on whether they're the victim, whether they're just general questions with the court's facility shut down? And they're still employees. The people from the DA's office are still working, and likewise for the public defender's office too. And I know I've only got the DA side of things today, but just in general, is the website or is the normal process now to contact you? In some cases, it could be Genesee Justice if they wanted to go through their victim assistance program. But I guess here's an opportunity to kind of speak to people that might be confused or unsure, and these are weird times of how they would get a hold of somebody on their case.
Kevin, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think the best way for a victim to contact us, Matt, is to, if you know the individual ADA, send an email. Every assistant in the office is checking their emails throughout the day, every business day, at least, and will respond as necessary to any inquiries from a victim. If there's a victim advocate, contact that person as well, because they're still working. Anybody who is a victim in a case that perhaps originated after the pause that we're experiencing can contact the DA's office through the DA District Attorney email, which is, I believe, posted on the county web page for the District Attorney's office. I want to just mention also the people who have been subpoenaed for these trials that have been postponed. They may be wondering, rightly so, whether they should appear if they're under a subpoena, because it is a court order to appear for the purpose of giving testimony. Those subpoenas are going to be, you're not going to have to appear until you've been given a notice from our office or from the court on a new date. If you've been subpoenaed, the subpoena is still valid. The date will change, but you're still under an obligation to appear under the original subpoena, even though that date may change. Anybody who has a subpoena in a local court, I'd like to mention that real quick, because the local courts were directed, it wasn't an option, they were directed to cease operations and not go in and do any court business. So they have been, at home as well. They're not able to check the court emails. And if you have a subpoena or a matter before a local court, such as a traffic ticket of some kind, and you're wondering whether or not you should appear or the date has come and gone, I would expect that the courts will be able to start operations again shortly. Once they do, they will be rescheduling just like the county court here, and they'll be sending out notices to individual defendants or motorists who've had tickets about a new court date. There are, contact information on the internet for every town court in Genesee County. If you have a matter in the town of Leroy, town of Batavia, you can go to their webpage. There's contact information for the court where you can send an email, a letter, or call after the courts start again. If anybody's address has changed, they should notify the court of any updated contact information, telephone, email, physical address, because that's what the court's going to need to use in order to contact them. So, victims we're very concerned about, and they should email us. We're with the limited exception of attorneys stopping by every so often on an irregular basis. Not everybody's in their office, so they won't get voicemail messages immediately. You could leave a message if it doesn't need an immediate response, but the better way to get a response from any one of us is to use our county emails, or if you don't have that, the district attorney email, which, as I said, should be posted on our webpage.
Great, thanks, Kevin. I did share that page, your website that listed your email address and the phone number, and just and keeping on both sides of the aisle here. I'm going to do a quick share in addition to show the public defender's side, in case you have a case and you want to reach out to the public defender's office if you don't have a private attorney, that there's a website and a phone number to reach in that regard. And I had shown the district attorney's office. Again, here is the email and the phone number for that office as well. So you can hit pause and record that down at home if you want to.
Well, Matt, you just made me realize that needs to be updated when I was looking at our webpage. So not all the information there is up to date, but
is there a different phone number than you have on there?
No, the phone number.
Yes, the office staff, that we were not going to worry about that, but the phone number and the email address is the key that people should be reaching out to and contacting. I know you've had some recent leaves and new hires and all that stuff, so we'll definitely get that updated on the website. But the important thing is the contact information. Great. That's everything that I could think of as far as for questions, and I don't know if there's anything else, gentlemen, that you wanted to touch base with. Any you guys, like every other agency and department I've spoken to, they're still behind the scenes working. We're still doing everything we can allowable in these times. I know in your case, the courts, you're kind of at the mercy in a large regard of what you can do. But where there is the ability to get up on these cases and get ahead, you are doing everything you can to avoid that crush of when the courts do open. So I appreciate all the efforts you're putting in there, and that you're still answering the phones and returning emails and responding to people, whether they're the victims or individuals that you do conduct business with on a daily basis. So I appreciate all of that. And one last time, is there anything else that you might have that? If not, I appreciate your time on this, and keep up the great work, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you.